What I really want to do is have volumes or forms that can have a color, and then the color changes or goes away or comes back, and to find ways of doing that, and to do it in a very pure way. To not have any subject that has to do, say, with, some kind of angst or something that expresses grief or trauma or something, which I think a lot of art nowadays does. I think it was D.K. Rose said to me several years ago something about, "Are you a purist?" And yeah, I had to say yes, I guess so. And to me that means there's no other subject matter except the visual forms themselves. So it's not about love or hate. It's flowing. There's a pump in a reservoir here in the base and a timer. It's a 30-minute timer. It's set to be on about 14 minutes, I think, right now. So it has pumped up. Now the pump is shut off, so it will drain back down. And in the draining process, a very nice thing happens with these air bubbles. You see each one of these little chambers here is connected with a little opening on the bottom, along the bottom there, and also along the top. So that allows them to fill or to empty. Well, the center one, of course, is emptying, and more oil's coming in from the sides, but air has a chance to get in there and make those bubbles. And I just am particularly pleased with those bubbles, actually. Mm-hmm. And as the oil gets lower, there's not quite so much pressure to get out, so it turns out the bubbles are broader and they're spaced out more. So the effect is different later on. And you can see it draining there too, and so the shape gets changed as the oil drains down.
Does it drain from one to the next to the next?
Yes, it does. It does. Mm-hmm. And the same on the bottom there, and then of course right about there the tubing goes down through the base into the reservoir down there. So there are some kind of random things that just happen that I think are quite pleasing, kind of phenomenon of the natural world, you might say.
Does the oil go up all the way to that other upper chamber there?
It will go up there if the pump has been on long enough. And also the oil gets warmer as it runs more, so it flows faster then. It has been up in there a little bit, not all the way up.
Do the air bubbles are they getting longer?
They're getting longer, yes. You can see because there's more air getting in now. The pressure of the oil to get down isn't as great as this level here gets lower. The basic principal pressure in a liquid it just depends on height. So like in the ocean, of course, the farther down you go, the greater the pressure. It's I think a linear function.
So there's no opening at the top here?
The opening is here.
Is there? Right.
Yeah,
okay.
And so it has been up in here, it has been over there.
So the oil can go up there.
And in fact, that's the reason for that piece of tubing there. If it ever got really high, it just keep climbing up there.
So you'd have time to switch it up.
Yeah, rather than just spilling out, I guess. I have had some spills at times at home or something, but yeah. But I particularly like those shapes that are made there, that kind of stair-stepping.
Yeah.
And you could probably even write mathematical equations for those heights. Yeah.
It reminds me of the nude descending the staircase by Duchamp.
Actually, what you've got here is a chaotic system. Although you could write mathematical equations, you could never solve them. The only way you can find out is to actually do it.
Big long book.
Fascinating demonstration of chaos.
Well, it seems to me it's kind of ordered chaos. Well, this wall is a wonderful opportunity to make something that just really kind of climbs up the wall. Of course, goes through the wall. On the other side is the reservoir and the timer. And it's 15-minute increments that I can set the timer at. So it's very much the idea of drawing in space. I just, I like to imagine myself taking a pencil or charcoal or something and going across like that, and then coming up and going like that. But of course, it's in a sense more permanent, and it depends on a lot of careful craftsmanship, a lot of cutting the brass and soldering and tapping threads for little machine screws, all that kind of thing, to allow me to do this more large-scale drawing. And then these are resin forms which have been, which came out of that same block actually that had cracked so badly, that I've cut and polished and actually even drilled out holes so that it can function as a piece of tubing too, in a sense. And this one is actually like a branch or a T, because it was, one comes in and then there's a line here has been reamed out along the bottom before it was glued, and so there's a branching. So that is something that I think adds interest. And we also get some air bubbles here. I think the reason is that this larger piece of brass tubing is flat enough that there is some air spaces in here that can then get the oil. They can kind of force their way into the oil as it's moving up for a while. Then it stops. So I've learned how to keep the angle of the brass quite flat so that it will do that.
How high up does the oil go up on this piece?
Well, it's been up in here. It's been above the top of that resin form, and it's been up here a ways. And actually, it's worked pretty well for 5 weeks. It has a little bit of a leak here, which runs down here, but I don't really mind that. And you really couldn't hurt this floor with a little bit of oil, I don't think.
It's seen a little bit.
It's seen, yes, a variety of things. And of course, here is the magnolia painting with the magnolia blossoms and the stems here that come across. This is some actually pussy willow. This is kind of a springtime piece. But a lot of the linear activity, the drawn line. And so I see quite a relationship between this one and this one. In fact, in a way, the world of nature where you have a lot of vines and stems and things hanging is kind of is really my inspiration for this. It's like I want to do something very modern, but yet refer back to the world of nature. So, any questions or anything?
I hadn't realized until this moment how connected they were until I was standing as you were talking and seeing the two of them from this vantage point. And yet I've been through the gallery a number of times. But they're very close. Even the coloration is very similar, as well as the linear effects.
Yeah, some of this kind of light violet and yeah.
The elements that I find similar are the transparency and the liquid. Liquids moving up here, and then the watercolors.
Yeah, transparency is something that I'm very interested in. And I feel like some of these leaves that are like a year old or so that are still hanging in vines are rather delicate, almost transparent.
Have you ever thought of painting with your oil and transmission fluid?
You mean on paper? Well, that's an idea.